Good morning, everyone. Have you ever walked into a room and felt a strange tension? Have you noticed that some people seem distant or indifferent toward you? Maybe you've wondered, do people secretly hate me? The truth is, people rarely express their real feelings openly. Instead, their resentment, jealousy, or dislike simmers beneath the surface. And most of the time, we are completely unaware of why it happens. Confidence is a powerful trait. It allows people to walk into a room with their head held high, make bold decisions, and inspire others. However, when confidence turns into arrogance, it becomes repulsive. People naturally gravitate toward those who believe in themselves, but they quickly pull away from those who make them feel small or inferior. There's a fine line between self-assurance and self-importance, and once that line is crossed, resentment begins to build. Arrogance manifests in many ways. It could be the person who always dominates conversations, dismisses opposing viewpoints, or constantly brags about their accomplishments. It's not that people dislike success, far from it. Most admire and respect those who have achieved great things. But when someone continuously reminds others of their superiority, it creates an environment where others feel undervalued or inadequate. One of the most damaging aspects of arrogance is the inability to acknowledge mistakes. An arrogant person refuses to admit when they are wrong, even when evidence is presented against them. Instead of accepting responsibility, they deflect blame or make excuses. This behavior frustrates those around them, making it difficult to build genuine connections. No one wants to be in a relationship, whether personal or professional, where their opinions are always dismissed. Another trait of arrogance is the need to be the center of attention. Arrogant individuals often steer every conversation back to themselves, making everything about their experiences, struggles, and victories. This makes others feel unseen and unheard. Conversation should be a two-way street where both parties feel valued. When someone only talks about themselves, it signals that they are more interested in being admired than in genuinely connecting with others. Arrogance also reveals itself in the way a person treats those they perceive as beneath them. Whether it's a waiter, a receptionist, or a stranger on the street, an arrogant person often looks down on others, believing that their status, wealth, or intelligence makes them superior. However, true character is revealed not by how one treats their equals, but by how they treat those who have nothing to offer them. People remember how they were made to feel, and arrogance leaves a bitter taste. Another major issue with arrogance is its impact on teamwork. Whether in a workplace, a sports team, or a group of friends, arrogant individuals often believe they know best. They dismiss advice, refuse to collaborate, and act as though their ideas are the only ones that matter. This creates frustration, leading to a toxic environment where others feel unheard and unappreciated. Over time, people will distance themselves from someone who refuses to listen or compromise. Ironically, arrogance often stems from insecurity. Many people who act superior do so because they fear being seen as weak or unworthy. They overcompensate by exaggerating their achievements, belittling others, or demanding constant validation. Unfortunately, this backfires as people see through the act and recognize the insecurity beneath the arrogance. True confidence, on the other hand, doesn't need to shout. It speaks through actions, humility, and quiet self-assurance. The most frustrating thing about arrogance is that it shuts the door to personal growth. When someone believes they already know everything, they stop learning. They refuse feedback, ignore constructive criticism, and remain stuck in their ways. This not only damages relationships, but also limits their potential. Growth requires humility, the ability to admit flaws, learn from mistakes, and improve over time. Without it, arrogance becomes a person's greatest weakness. Negativity is one of the fastest ways to push people away. While everyone experiences tough times and difficult emotions, constantly expressing negativity can drain those around you. People naturally seek out relationships that uplift, inspire, and bring joy. But when someone is always focusing on the bad, complaining, or seeing the worst in every situation, it creates an exhausting atmosphere that others want to escape. One of the biggest signs of a negative person is habitual complaining. No matter what happens, whether it's a sunny day, a work promotion, or a kind gesture, they always find something wrong. They will complain about the weather being too hot instead of appreciating the sunshine, or they'll focus on the one tiny flaw in an otherwise great opportunity. Over time, this constant pessimism wears on others, making them less likely to share good news or engage in conversation. Negativity also manifests through gossip. People who thrive on discussing others' failures, mistakes, or personal lives create an environment of distrust and discomfort. When someone consistently talks badly about others, it raises the question, what do they say about me when I'm not around? Gossiping might seem like harmless conversation, but it spreads toxicity and makes people hesitant to form close bonds. Another way negativity drains people is through an overly critical attitude. Some individuals criticize everything: how someone dresses, how they speak, what they do for a living, or even how they enjoy their hobbies. Instead of offering encouragement or constructive feedback, they tear others down. Over time, this creates resentment because no one likes to feel constantly judged or belittled. Negativity isn't just about words, it's also about energy. Some people walk into a room and bring an air of defeat, bitterness, or anger with them. Their body language, sighs, and expressions make it clear that they are dissatisfied with life. While it's natural to have bad days, constantly projecting negativity makes others feel like they have to tiptoe around, afraid to say the wrong thing or unintentionally make the situation worse. Negativity is contagious. Just like laughter spreads and lifts a room, complaining and pessimism drag it down. When one person starts dwelling on problems, it often encourages others to do the same. Instead of brainstorming solutions, the focus remains on everything that's wrong. This not only affects personal relationships but also slows down progress in workplaces, friendships, and even families. One of the most damaging aspects of negativity is that it shuts people out. When someone is always negative, they become emotionally unavailable. People may try to offer support or advice, but their words are often dismissed with phrases like, "You just don't understand," or "Nothing ever works out for me." Over time, friends and loved ones stop trying, not because they don't care, but because their efforts seem useless. Ironically, negativity often stems from deeper personal struggles. Many negative people aren't even aware of how much they drain others. They may feel stuck, hopeless, or trapped in their own disappointments. Unfortunately, instead of seeking solutions, they continue to feed the cycle of negativity, unaware that it is pushing away the very people who might help them find a way forward. One of the most overlooked yet essential aspects of building strong relationships is the ability to listen. People crave connection, and a big part of that comes from feeling heard and understood. However, when someone consistently fails to listen, it creates frustration, distance, and even resentment. No one enjoys talking to someone who only pretends to listen or constantly redirects the conversation back to themselves. Over time, this behavior makes people feel unimportant and undervalued. Failing to listen can take many forms. Some people interrupt constantly, cutting others off before they've even finished their thoughts. Others nod along but clearly aren't paying attention, waiting only for their turn to speak. Then there are those who listen just enough to find a way to shift the topic back to themselves. No matter the form, the result is the same. People feel ignored and disconnected. Listening isn't just about hearing words, it's about understanding emotions, intentions, and deeper meanings. Many people listen at a surface level, catching only what's being said instead of truly engaging with the message. This leads to shallow conversations where people feel unheard and unseen. Active listening, maintaining eye contact, nodding, and responding thoughtfully shows genuine interest and makes others feel valued. Another sign of poor listening is the tendency to offer unsolicited advice instead of simply being present. Sometimes people don't want solutions, they just want someone to acknowledge their feelings. When a person jumps straight into problem-solving mode without taking the time to understand, it can come across as dismissive. Being a good listener means knowing when to offer advice and when to simply provide a supportive space. People also fail to listen when they are distracted. Whether it's checking a phone during a conversation, looking around the room, or multitasking, these behaviors send a clear message. You're not my priority right now. No one wants to compete for attention, and when someone consistently does this, others start to withdraw. In a world filled with distractions, giving someone your full attention is one of the simplest yet most powerful ways to show respect. Poor listening can harm relationships in both personal and professional settings. In friendships, it makes people feel unimportant. In workplaces, it leads to misunderstandings, errors, and frustration among colleagues. In romantic relationships, it can create emotional distance, making one or both partners feel like their thoughts and feelings don't matter. When people don't feel heard, they eventually stop sharing altogether. One of the most damaging aspects of not listening is how it impacts trust. When someone repeatedly ignores, interrupts, or dismisses others, they develop a reputation for being self-centered or indifferent. Over time, people will hesitate to open up to them, knowing their words won't be valued. This can lead to isolation, as people naturally gravitate toward those who make them feel seen and heard. Ironically, those who fail to listen often want to be heard the most. They dominate conversations, not realizing that true connection isn't about speaking, it's about understanding. The best communicators aren't those who talk the most, but those who listen the best. Developing strong listening skills isn't just about being polite, it's about fostering deeper, more meaningful relationships that stand the test of time. Relationships thrive on balance, on giving as much as you take. But when someone consistently prioritizes their own needs, wants, and desires over others, people start to feel used and unappreciated. Selfishness is one of the quickest ways to damage friendships, family bonds, and even professional relationships. It creates an environment where others feel like their needs don't matter, leading to frustration, resentment, and eventual distance. One of the most obvious signs of selfishness is only reaching out when you need something. If you only call a friend when you need advice, borrow money, or want a favor, they will eventually notice. Genuine relationships are built on mutual care and support, not convenience. When people feel like they are only valued for what they can provide, they start to withdraw, leaving the selfish person wondering why their relationships seem to fade. Selfish people often dominate conversations, making every discussion about themselves. They rarely ask how others are doing, and even when they do, they quickly steer the topic back to their own lives. Over time, this makes others feel like their experiences and emotions don't matter. A good relationship should be a two-way street, where both people feel heard, valued, and understood. Another way selfishness manifests is through a lack of consideration for others' time and effort. Whether it's showing up late to meetings, canceling plans last minute, or expecting people to adjust their schedules without reciprocating, this behavior sends a clear message: my time is more important than yours. While people may tolerate it for a while, Eventually, they will stop making an effort, leaving the selfish person feeling isolated. Selfishness also appears in decision making. A selfish person often insists on having things their way, whether it's choosing where to eat, what movie to watch, or how plans should unfold. They rarely compromise, making others feel like their opinions don't matter. Over time, this creates frustration and makes people less willing to spend time with them because they know their needs will always come second. In more serious situations, selfishness can manifest as emotional neglect. Some people only care about their own feelings and fail to support others in times of need. For example, if a friend is going through a hard time, a selfish person may respond with indifference or quickly turn the conversation back to their own struggles. This lack of emotional reciprocity makes people feel unimportant and can destroy trust in relationships. Ironically, selfish people often don't realize they are pushing others away. They may see relationships fading and blame others without recognizing their own role in the issue. Instead of reflecting on their behavior, they assume people are being unfair or distant for no reason. This lack of self-awareness keeps them trapped in a cycle of broken relationships, wondering why people don't seem to stick around. The sad truth is that selfishness creates loneliness. While self-care and personal priorities are important, making everything about you eventually leaves you with no one left to care. People value those who show kindness, consideration, and generosity. When relationships become one-sided, those on the giving end will eventually walk away, leaving the selfish person wondering why they always end up alone. People value authenticity. When someone is genuine, they build trust, strengthen relationships, and create meaningful connections. On the other hand, fake behavior is easy to spot and often leads to distrust and resentment. When people sense that someone is being insincere, whether through false compliments, exaggerated kindness, or pretending to care, they begin to question that person's true intentions. Over time, this creates distance because no one likes to feel manipulated or deceived. One of the most common forms of fake behavior is excessive flattery. While compliments are a normal part of social interaction, people can tell when someone is saying something just to gain favor. A person who constantly praises others without sincerity eventually loses credibility. If someone gives compliments to everyone but speaks negatively behind their backs, people will catch on, making them wary of trusting anything that person says. Another clear sign of fakeness is changing personalities depending on the situation. A fake person might act one way around a certain group of people, but completely different around others. They might be friendly and kind in public but rude or dismissive in private. This inconsistency makes others question which version of the person is real, leading to a sense of unease and mistrust. People appreciate consistency because it shows reliability and honesty. Fake behavior also appears when someone pretends to care but never follows through with action. For example, they might ask, "How are you?" out of habit rather than genuine interest. They may say, "I'm always here for you," but disappear the moment they are needed. Words without actions feel empty, and over time, people stop believing in them. Real care and concern are demonstrated through effort, not just polite phrases. Social climbing is another way fakeness reveals itself. Some individuals only associate with others when it benefits them, whether for social status, job opportunities, or personal gain. They might act friendly toward influential people, but treat those they consider unimportant with indifference. This selective kindness exposes their true nature, making others feel used rather than valued. Relationships should be built on mutual respect, not personal advantage. Gossiping is another major red flag of fake behavior. If someone talks negatively about others behind their backs while acting friendly to their faces, it signals dishonesty. People who engage in gossip often assume no one will find out, but the truth always comes out eventually. When others realize that a person is two-faced, trust is broken and relationships suffer. No one wants to be close to someone who might betray them when they're not around. Another sign of insincerity is exaggerating emotions or interests to fit in. Some people pretend to like things they don't, agree with opinions they don't share, or overreact in certain situations just to gain approval. While this may work temporarily, it eventually becomes clear that they are not being true to themselves. Authentic people stand by their beliefs and interests, even if they don't align with everyone else's. The problem with fake behavior is that it doesn't last. People may fall for it at first, but over time, inconsistencies become obvious. When trust is broken, it is difficult to rebuild. Relationships require honesty, vulnerability, and real connection, qualities that fake behavior cannot provide. Eventually, those who pretend to be something they're not will find themselves surrounded by people who don't truly know or trust them. Competition can be healthy when it pushes people to grow, improve, and achieve their goals. However, when every interaction becomes a battle for superiority, it drains the energy from relationships. Constant competition turns friendships into rivalries, conversations into comparisons, and accomplishments into measuring sticks. Instead of feeling supported, people feel like they are always being tested, making it difficult to relax and enjoy genuine connections. One of the biggest problems with overly competitive people is their inability to celebrate others' successes. Instead of being happy when a friend or colleague achieves something, they immediately feel the need to outdo them. If someone shares good news, the competitive person will quickly respond with something they've done that is bigger or better. This creates an environment where people hesitate to share their achievements because they know they will be met with comparison instead of encouragement. Another exhausting aspect of constant competition is the need to prove superiority in every conversation. Some people always have a better story, a crazier experience, or a bigger problem than everyone else. If one person says they had a busy day, the competitor had an even busier one. If someone talks about a personal struggle, the competitor has been through something even worse. This behavior makes conversations feel like a contest rather than a meaningful exchange. Competitiveness can also damage teamwork. In professional or group settings, a highly competitive person may struggle to collaborate because they always want to be the best. Instead of working together, they try to take all the credit, dominate discussions, or dismiss others' ideas. This makes them difficult to work with and often leads to tension among colleagues or teammates. A successful team requires cooperation, not constant one-upmanship. In friendships and personal relationships, excessive competition creates distance. People want to feel supported, not like they are in a never-ending race. If someone always turns simple activities into a challenge, whether it's who earns more, who has a better vacation, or who has the most impressive achievements, it makes the relationship feel transactional rather than meaningful. Over time, this pressure causes exhaustion, leading people to withdraw. One of the most frustrating traits of competitive individuals is their inability to admit defeat. They struggle to acknowledge when someone else is better at something or has earned success through hard work. Instead of accepting reality, they may downplay others' achievements, make excuses, or find ways to shift attention back to themselves. This unwillingness to acknowledge others' strengths makes relationships feel unbalanced and unfulfilling. Ironically, constant competition often stems from insecurity. Many competitive people are not trying to be the best because they truly enjoy it, but because they feel the need to prove their worth. They measure their value based on how they compare to others, making every situation feel like a challenge they must win. Unfortunately, this mindset prevents them from forming deep and trusting relationships as people eventually grow tired of the never-ending rivalry. The biggest issue with excessive competition is that it replaces connection with comparison. Instead of forming genuine bonds, competitive people create an environment where relationships feel like a scoreboard. True friendships and meaningful relationships are built on mutual support, not on the constant need to prove who is better. Eventually, people will choose to walk away rather than continue playing a game they never signed up for. Everyone makes mistakes. Whether it's saying something hurtful, making a wrong decision, or unintentionally offending someone, errors are a natural part of life. However, what truly defines a person is not whether they make mistakes, but how they handle them. When someone refuses to apologize, they lose the respect of those around them. One of the biggest reasons people hesitate to apologize is pride. Some believe that admitting fault makes them look weak or inferior. They would rather ignore the issue or shift the blame than acknowledge they were wrong. Unfortunately, this attitude doesn't go unnoticed. People respect those who can take responsibility for their actions, but they quickly lose respect for those who refuse to own up to their mistakes. Another reason people avoid apologizing is the fear of consequences. They worry that admitting fault will make them look bad, cost them a relationship, or put them in an uncomfortable position. However, avoiding an apology often causes more damage than the mistake itself. A sincere apology can repair trust, while refusing to apologize only deepens the hurt and makes the situation worse. Refusing to apologize also sends the message that other people's feelings don't matter. When someone expresses that they were hurt or affected by an action, dismissing their feelings without acknowledgement makes them feel invalidated. Over time, this creates resentment. People want to feel heard and understood, and when someone consistently refuses to apologize, it shows a lack of empathy and consideration. Apologizing is not just about saying, "I'm sorry." A genuine apology acknowledges the mistake, expresses remorse, and shows a willingness to improve. People who refuse to apologize often give defensive responses like, "That's just how I am," or "You're too sensitive." These excuses shift the blame instead of addressing the issue, making it difficult for others to trust or respect them. In professional settings, refusing to apologize can damage credibility and teamwork. Leaders who never admit mistakes create a toxic work environment where employees feel unheard and undervalued. Colleagues who refuse to apologize make collaboration difficult, as their unwillingness to take responsibility erodes trust. In contrast, those who apologize when necessary earn the respect of their peers and foster a healthier, more cooperative atmosphere. Ironically, refusing to apologize often backfires. The longer someone avoids admitting fault, the bigger the issue becomes. People may start to distance themselves, seeing the person as stubborn, egotistical, or lacking emotional depth. A simple apology could have resolved the problem, but the refusal to give one makes people feel disrespected and unappreciated. At its core, apologizing is about maintaining relationships and demonstrating character. No one expects perfection, but they do expect accountability. When someone refuses to apologize, they show that their pride is more important than the people around them. Over time, this pattern damages friendships, family bonds, and professional connections, leaving the person isolated and struggling to maintain meaningful relationships. Empathy is one of the most important qualities in any relationship. It allows people to connect on a deeper level, understand each other's emotions, and offer meaningful support. When empathy is missing, relationships start to feel cold, transactional, or one-sided. Without the ability to put themselves in someone else's shoes, a person can come across as insensitive, dismissive, or even selfish. Over time, this lack of emotional connection creates distance, pushing people away. One of the biggest signs of lacking empathy is failing to recognize or acknowledge other people's feelings. When someone is struggling or upset, an empathetic person listens and validates their emotions. However, a person without empathy may dismiss their pain, downplay their experiences, or ignore their emotions entirely. This makes others feel unheard and alone, leading to resentment and emotional disconnection. Another way a lack of empathy creates distance is through an inability to see things from another perspective. People who lack empathy often believe their way of thinking is the only correct way. They struggle to understand different viewpoints, which leads to frequent conflicts and misunderstandings. Instead of trying to understand why someone feels a certain way, they become defensive or dismissive, making others feel like their opinions don't matter. Empathy is especially important in times of crisis or hardship. When someone is going through a difficult period, whether it's losing a job, dealing with personal struggles, or facing emotional pain, what they need most is support and understanding. A lack of empathy in these moments can feel like abandonment. If a person constantly fails to offer comfort or care during tough times, others will stop turning to them for help, weakening the bond between them. People who lack empathy also tend to be emotionally unavailable. They may struggle to form deep connections because they don't engage with others' emotions in a meaningful way. Instead of offering comfort or showing understanding, they might respond with indifference or annoyance. Over time, this emotional distance causes people to stop sharing their thoughts and feelings, leading to shallow, disconnected relationships. A lack of empathy also contributes to selfish behavior. When someone doesn't consider how their words or actions affect others, they may come across as inconsiderate or uncaring. They might interrupt conversations, dismiss other people's struggles, or make everything about themselves. While they may not intend to be hurtful, their inability to acknowledge the needs and emotions of others makes relationships feel one-sided and exhausting. This emotional disconnection doesn't just affect personal relationships, it also impacts professional and social interactions. In the workplace, colleagues who lack empathy create a toxic environment where others feel undervalued and unheard. Leaders who fail to understand their employees' struggles lose the trust and respect of their teams. In friendships, a lack of empathy makes it hard to form meaningful bonds, as relationships thrive on mutual understanding and care. At its core, empathy is about making others feel seen, heard, and valued. When empathy is missing, people feel isolated, misunderstood, and unappreciated. No one wants to be around someone who constantly disregards their emotions or fails to acknowledge their struggles. Over time, the emotional distance created by a lack of empathy leads to broken relationships, loneliness, and a reputation for being cold or unapproachable. Trust is the foundation of any strong relationship. Whether it's with friends, family, colleagues, or partners, people rely on one another for support, commitment, and honesty. However, when someone is unreliable, that trust quickly begins to crumble. Being unreliable means failing to follow through on promises, showing up inconsistently, or being unpredictable in a way that causes others stress and disappointment. Over time, this pattern damages relationships and creates emotional distance. One of the most frustrating aspects of dealing with an unreliable person is never knowing if they will actually do what they say. They might frequently cancel plans at the last minute, forget important commitments, or fail to keep their word. This behavior makes it difficult for others to depend on them, leading to frustration and disappointment. When someone can't be counted on, people eventually stop including them in plans altogether. Unreliability also weakens professional relationships. In the workplace, being dependable is crucial for teamwork, productivity, and leadership. When a colleague or employee consistently misses deadlines, fails to complete tasks, or doesn't show up when needed, it causes stress for everyone else. Others are forced to pick up the slack, leading to resentment and a lack of trust. A person's reputation for being unreliable can cost them promotions, career opportunities, and professional respect. Another way unreliability damages relationships is by creating emotional instability. When someone is unpredictable, sometimes showing up, sometimes disappearing, sometimes making promises they don't keep, it creates uncertainty. This inconsistency makes people feel anxious and unsure about whether they can truly rely on that person. Over time, this emotional exhaustion leads to people distancing themselves in order to avoid frustration. People who are unreliable often make excuses for their behavior. They may apologize repeatedly but fail to change, or they may blame circumstances instead of taking responsibility. While everyone makes mistakes from time to time, a pattern of unreliability shows a lack of respect for others' time and emotions. Words mean little without actions, and eventually people stop believing in promises that are never fulfilled. One of the worst consequences of unreliability is the damage it does to trust. Trust is not built overnight, it takes time, effort, and consistency. However, trust can be broken quickly when someone repeatedly lets others down. Once trust is lost, it is incredibly difficult to rebuild. Even if the unreliable person later tries to prove they have changed, people will hesitate to believe them because of past experiences. Unreliable people often don't realize how much their behavior affects others. They may assume that small cancellations or forgotten promises don't matter, but each broken commitment adds up. Over time, this pattern leads to a reputation for being unreliable, making it harder to maintain close relationships. People begin to view them as careless, untrustworthy, or simply not worth investing in. Ultimately, reliability is a sign of respect. It shows that someone values other people's time, emotions, and trust. When reliability is missing, relationships become strained and people start to pull away. No one wants to constantly wonder whether they can depend on someone. If someone repeatedly proves that they cannot be trusted to follow through, they will eventually find themselves alone, wondering why others no longer rely on them. No one enjoys being around someone who constantly criticizes, belittles, or looks down on others. A judgmental attitude creates an atmosphere of negativity, making people feel defensive, unworthy, or unwelcome. While it's natural to have personal opinions, consistently judging others pushes people away, leading to isolation. Instead of forming meaningful connections, a judgmental person builds walls between themselves and those around them. One major issue with being judgmental is that it makes people feel unsafe. When someone is constantly criticized, whether for their choices, appearance, beliefs, or lifestyle, they begin to feel like they can't be themselves. They start filtering what they say, avoiding deep conversations, and distancing themselves to protect their self-esteem. Over time, they may stop interacting with the judgmental person altogether, choosing relationships where they feel accepted instead. Judgmental people often fail to see their own flaws. They are quick to point out the shortcomings of others, but slow to recognize their own mistakes. This double standard frustrates those around them, as no one likes to be unfairly scrutinized by someone who refuses to acknowledge their own imperfections. People respect those who are self-aware and humble, but they grow tired of those who constantly criticize without reflecting on their own behavior. Another reason judgmental attitudes isolate people is that they make conversations feel tense and unpleasant. Instead of open discussions where people can share thoughts freely, interactions with a judgmental person often feel like a test. Others become cautious about expressing opinions, fearing they will be mocked or dismissed. Eventually, people choose to avoid the judgmental person rather than endure the discomfort of constant criticism. Judgmental behavior can also create a reputation that follows someone wherever they go. Word spreads quickly when a person is known for being harsh, condescending, or overly critical. Friends, family, and co-workers may start avoiding them, not because they did anything directly harmful, but because their negativity is exhausting. This reputation makes it difficult to form new relationships, as people prefer to surround themselves with those who offer support rather than judgment. Ironically, judgmental people often justify their behavior by believing they are simply being honest or helpful. However, there is a difference between constructive feedback and unnecessary criticism. Constructive feedback is given with kindness and a desire to help, while judgmental attitudes stem from a place of superiority. When people feel judged rather than supported, they withdraw, making genuine connection impossible. Another way judgmental attitudes create isolation is by limiting a person's ability to understand different perspectives. People who are quick to judge rarely take the time to truly listen or empathize with others. They assume their way of thinking is the only correct one, which prevents meaningful discussions and deep relationships. When others feel like they are constantly being dismissed or misunderstood, they stop engaging, leaving the judgmental person alone in their rigid mindset. At its core, relationships are built on acceptance, understanding, and mutual respect. When someone is overly critical, they make others feel small and unwelcome. Over time, people will seek relationships where they feel valued rather than judged. The more someone isolates themselves through negativity, the lonelier they become, creating a cycle of isolation that is difficult to break. When you become more self-aware, kinder, and more understanding, you'll notice a shift. People won't just tolerate you, they will genuinely enjoy being around you. Thank you.